I've got no problem with the song Blue Dabba Dee.
Dabba Die. Eiffel 65.
If I was green, I would die.
Is that good?
Is that how?
Yeah, I'm
Please.
blue. If I was green, I would die.
I thought it was just Dabba Dee.
Dabba Die.
As it says,
If I was green, I would die. Dabu dee dadu die.
Are you making this up?
a friend of mine told me that song was actually about depression, hence the
Yeah.
blue thing.
Everything's blue, isn't it?
And then the Dabba Dee bit was originally going to be I will bleed, I will die.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Would he bleed blue?
It's like
that make him royalty.
It would. So why is he so depressed?
Because no one worships him anymore. He's fallen royalty. He's fallen on hard times. All he's got is a Corvette and a girlfriend.
It's more than I was going to say. It's more than I've got. I've got a girlfriend. I haven't got a Corvette, so it is more than I've got.
Oh,
Yeah.
so he's got nothing to be afraid of.
No, he's got it all as far as I'm concerned. Fuck that guy.
It's the Corvette. That's what you want. That's what you aspire to in life. Let's get a Courgette.
Welcome to Trufax with Ryder and Ted.
Welcome to an episode about numbers. Today you are joined by Ryder Broadbent Smith,
Hello.
Dan Hills,
Hello.
and Ed Sanders. Hello. And I'm going to begin this episode as we always do by asking the team, those present, what is numbers?
What is
That sounds like a look around you episode title.
I don't really have an answer for that. It seems like it should be something much easier to answer than any other episode so far. 'Cause it's one of the first things we learn as we're growing up. It's just-
Where did numbers come from? That's I think that's actually going to lead on to something later. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it's data. Would you say numbers are data?
It's just
Or-
like it's a name for groups of things. It's how we count.
How would you learn what numbers are when you're a kid, when you're young?
The vampire, the Count from Sesame Street.
And just by looking at groups of things and acknowledging there are so many of them, and then someone going, well, that's how many of these things there are. And then I say, okay, I believe you.
Fingers as well. Like if you saw there are 4 cats, and you're like, I've got 4 of these long things on my hands.
But that would
That's
suggest
helping.
you knew there were 4 cats first to compare them to your 4.
I didn't necessarily. I knew of the concept of
There's the
quantities,
Same, there's
but
the same cats as there are things
Yeah.
here coming out of my hand.
yeah.
I need a name for this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you ask your mom, and she goes, "That's 4." And then that's
So
a
do you-
number.
so do you think
it's what
that-
your mom told you when you were a baby.
Do you think numbers are just the names for it? Because what you're saying there is that we already counted the number of cats before we had a name for how many there were.
Well, numbers is the label for a label.
A label for a label.
Yeah.
It's also
So we had things originally, and then you had an amount of things when there was more than a single thing, and so we gave a number to the amounts, and then we had to give a name to the amounts. So numbers is the label for the label that we're given to the quantities.
What would happen if you had more than one number? Would that be a label for a label
That-
for a
that's,
label?
that's where numbers comes in. What is numbers? It's more than one number.
I saw a documentary once about numbers that said that you can't count higher than, I think it's 5, just by looking at something. Like if you see a group of items, like say stones on the floor, you can glance at it and see that there's 5 there, but beyond that, you have to start counting, breaking it down into groups of 3 or 2. 2 groups of 3 makes 6, for example.
Yeah, so you can see things in multiples of 5
Do you think having a name for these things, do you think
sets.
that helps? Do you think having numbers helps there?
Yeah, otherwise it is just an abstract concept, isn't it? You see a group of stuff, and you're like, okay, there's a group of stuff. There's no meaning to it otherwise. You can compare one amount of stuff to another amount of stuff, but unless you give it a name, it's just different amounts of stuff.
And one of the things that kind of let us become the, I guess, like society that we are today, like when we're Homo sapiens, right?
We may well be.
I definitely am.
Good. When there was that kind of divergent sort of split where there was one group of humans and then another group of humans and the other ones wipe the other ones out. That's happened a few times in human evolution.
Homo erectus.
Sure, yeah.
Not just saying it because it's funny.
Yeah.
It is
One
fun.
of the things that gave us a kind of better ability was that counting on your hands has existed for a long time, or as in kind of taking quantity and measuring the stock that you have. So say you've got 12 pelts, we could count up to 12 because we understood that we have 10 fingers, and then that 10 fingers plus 2 more fingers equals 12, whereas Homo erectus may not have been able to do that, where they could only be I've got 10 of my fingers, but I have more than 10 of these things, and couldn't process that, and therefore couldn't make stock for winter and things like that. So that is kind of I think quantity just is an early form of numbers before it even had a name.
David Attenborough went to a tribe in one of his 1987 documentaries, I think, called Life on Earth, where the tribe had never been in contact with the Western world in the past, and tried to interact with these people who obviously had a language of their own, but not one that was easily translatable, and discovered that they counted to 5 in exactly the same way that we do.
Wow.
On individual fingers. But then once they reached 6, 7, 8 and beyond, they would count by tapping different parts of their arm all the way up. So
yeah.
But they then eventually get back to the other hand. So when they were holding up 10 fingers, they're actually at about 50. They've tapped all the way up their arm, through their face, back down the other arm, and then their fingers start popping up.
I don't think they had 50 of anything to count. But if they did, maybe that's the case.
How big was this tribe?
There were only ever maybe 4 or 5 of them on screen at once.
I mean, tribes that sort of size are probably usually maximum of about 40 in size, I would think.
5 people is just one family. You sure it wasn't just people who got lost?
Also, we
I've
look
got to
at
assume that the David Attenborough wouldn't lie to me. If he did lie to me about this, then what else would he have lied to us about?
and they may
Everything.
Maybe condors aren't really extinct.
not. Condors are extinct.
He's got them all. He's got a little aviary in his back garden with all the remaining condors in. Carries a little condor egg around with him wherever he goes. He's going to hatch it one day. It'll be an Attenborough condor hybrid.
I want to see that. I want a live webcast of that.
I think also, 5 is like a family. That's in a kind of traditional nuclear family sort of state. This kind of indigenous tribe might not treat family or brothers and sisters and parents in the same way that we would.
Still 5 isn't a lot of people.
What else do we use numbers for?
Maths.
Time? Money?
Money, yeah. Numbers are everywhere. Numbers appear in nature. I want to talk about that
Computers.
a bit more later. Numbers are everything.
So,
Now that they exist and we understand them.
do you think numbers are another language then?
Well, Mean Girls, there's that line where it's I like maths. It's why? Because it's the same in every language. It's that's beautiful.
That is.
And I mean, I don't look at numbers as a language, but more kind of like a machine, if you know what I mean. It's something that you can put stuff into and it makes sense in a different way. So equations or theories
It's
and
only
things like
started making sense in that way once we've made it start making sense in that way.
that. But there's definitely a thing where we come up with an idea and then 50 years later maths and numbers can answer it.
Can I tell you about a conversation I had with an architect over Christmas regarding numbers? It got me interested because he told me about a time when numbers disagree with one another.
Ooh.
And he said he was talking about the move from imperial measurements to metric, when he was, for example, designing a house or the front of a house, where traditionally it would be divided into 3, to make it symmetrical and appear nice. And if he wanted 3 equal-sized parts, in imperial measurements, you can easily divide by 3 because everything is base 12, so you'd get something like 4, 4, and 4.
Yeah.
And the size of the house. Whereas in metric, you would never get a nice little number there. You would always get 3.3 recurring.
And you'd get a very small room somewhere else in the house, just that makes up for that.
And it would never quite
Little
balance
bit.
out. So it seems like numbers, although this universal language that we've sort of discovered kind of can disagree with each other.
But is that just because... So saying that on the metric and imperial things, that's just a kind of format that we've created for numbers to be used in. So,
And that's exactly what I was saying. It's so adaptive. We apply what makes sense to us to whatever we're trying to make sense of. And that's where these equations, theoretical numbers, we can just invent numbers now, I'm pretty certain.
billion, million, trillion.
Well,
Well,
those are
in-
kind of
in
real
that
whole
concept-
integers, but if we want to create a theoretical number, an imaginary number, to take a place in a equation
Yeah.
to explain the universe or why
Like-
life exists, we can just assign a letter to it and say, oh yeah, this
X.
is whatever.
Like
E.
42.
And now, yeah, it all suddenly makes sense until it's disproven and someone comes up with a newer and better equation to describe it.
E is a number. Yeah.
It's a letter.
I know. I use it every day when I'm spelling my name.
Or are you thinking of E numbers?
E numbers.
You don't get those in Smarties anymore.
Should we move on to the first question,
Yes, we shall. I'm going to go first today, if that's all right with you, gentlemen.
It is.
please?
So my question is, do either of you have a lucky number or an unlucky number even? And what's the significance behind that number?
So, every time you get on an aeroplane, I don't know if you notice, there is no row 13.
It's the same in a lot of hotels and hospitals and things like that as well. There's no 13th floor.
And is that just because of people's superstitions or because of planning permission?
Well,
What?
there's usually a 14th floor and a
that's true.
14th floor, so it seems odd that planning permission would say, yeah, you can have 16 floors, but you've got to name them irregularly. Just skip one.
Also, I don't think you need planning permission to make an aeroplane.
No, that's true.
So,
But like, well, you probably have to get permission to make the plan. for
I
an
reckon they
aeroplane.
originally had a row 13 and then noticed that nobody bought tickets for that particular row.
Yeah.
And consequently, I mean,
Do you think it's just a marketing thing rather than anything else?
Yeah.
Why is 13 considered unlucky?
I have no idea.
No, I mean, neither.
One of the theories I read was that it's to do with the Last Supper
Mm.
and that there were 13 people present, one of whom was Judas, and he's unlucky 13.
Okay.
Yeah.
He killed little Jesus.
I wanted to say it's something to do with it being a prime number, but it's not like a significant prime number because it's not a low. There's 11. There's
13
5.
sounds menacing, though.
That's your upbringing telling you that.
Is it?
Just like spiders being menacing. You
Yeah.
know,
I love spiders.
You've never been bitten by. Well,
I don't mind the number
You don't
13
know that.
either,
I
to
might
be
have
honest.
been bitten by a spider.
have you
I think I was once.
in the UK?
Yeah. A friend of mine, from back home, got bit in the leg by a spider, and it laid eggs in his leg.
Eee.
Yeah.
I've heard stories of people having spiders crawl into people's ears at night and laying
I
eggs
get
in
worried
there.
about that.
And then suddenly your brain starts functioning badly, or they'll like lay them behind your eyes or something. They crawl into your
Oh.
skull.
I woke up with a spider in my mouth once.
Did you eat it?
It went down. Yes.
I think there's some urban legend that we swallow
Yeah.
500 spiders in our lifetime or something absurd like that.
I read that was BS.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely is.
I've definitely swallowed one. So
But this isn't the spiders episode. This is the numbers episode.
that'd be a good episode.
We're
Then.
talking about numbers of spiders
Yeah.
that have gone in there. Numbers can be anything. Numbers are
So
it's a big subject. But unlucky numbers, lucky numbers.
Is 13 your unlucky number? Or is it more just a
I don't-
lucky number?
It's just a number to me,
Yeah.
really.
It's a lot of superstition, isn't it? And Friday the 13th as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
That apparently comes from sometime during the Crusades when a whole bunch of Knights Templars were arrested and executed,
Huh.
and that was a Friday the 13th. And so it has some historical context that is so far removed from anything we believe in now.
I always liked the number 16.
Mm.
I liked that it's divisible by all the even numbers.
Age
that
of
it's
consent in the UK.
yeah.
Mm.
That's
Ooh, is
That's-
that why you love it, Ed?
that's why.
Some fond memories. You love the law.
Yeah, actually, come to think of it, there was. I don't love the law. I love all that. That's not what happened at age
You
16.
love rules.
Love
Right.
rulers. Love all the numbers on them. What about you, Ryder?
In recent years, I've had a weird superstition about the number 37.
Another prime number.
Oh
Sorry, go on.
no, I didn't realise it was a prime number. I hadn't focused too much on the actual or looked much up about the number itself. Just it started because every time that it's 1:37 on a clock or a 24-hour clock, it's 1337, which in internet speak is leet. So that was like a nice little thing for a while, and then
And what does leet mean?
elite, the
Oh, it's a positive thing.
Best of the best.
best of the best.
Ah.
Elite
Yep.
speak is is when you use numbers in place of letters.
Numbers
and stuff.
instead of letters, but not like E numbers.
Not like E numbers.
Like
Like
you use 3 to mean E.
oh,
in
like
lit
how
speak.
people used to write B4 with the letter B and then the number 4.
Yeah,
that.
Yeah,
That kind of,
kind
I'm really.
That's elite.
You
And
guys
next
can
level
kind
shit.
put
You're
like
looking at me
a-
like I'm retarded.
like an 8 as a B as well. That would work.
Oh.
Or a 7 as a T is one.
Oh.
Or like an A as a
4.
Like
paper.
okay, this is more like you would on a license plate if you got a personalized number plate.
Yeah.
Because the elite have personalised number plates as well.
Do they?
That's where it all comes from. Yeah,
Do they, though?
It's just these people with money, they're pricks.
So you said that this was a lucky number for you?
I guess, like, I don't know. I felt like I feel like I've seen it around more than other numbers. I do also believe that it's just more that I notice it more because I've put significance in it. But at the same time, I may genuinely be seeing it more. So, for example, this Maltesers wrapper, it's 37 grams. Saw that earlier. I was like, ooh.
Is that why you picked them?
No, not at all. Like
Me and Ryder were in the supermarket looking at chocolate for a very long time. It was a 3 for $1.20 offer. We picked 2 things straight away. A long time to come up with the third one.
Yeah.
So now I know why you're looking
I didn't even know it
looking for
beforehand, though.
37. You're
I
looking
didn't know
for
it
that
beforehand.
number to jump out at you.
Maybe the number chose you. If you
Ooh.
if you didn't know beforehand,
Yeah.
It spoke to you.
it found.
I actually quite like the number as well, like aesthetically. I think it looks quite nice, and I tried not to put too much meaning in it, so it's just like a nice little thing whenever I see it around, just like a friend.
Like prime numbers do tend to be numbers that have significance for people. I think because they are unique and people can put their own projections onto the number, I guess. And it's not repeated. It's a little special
I
pattern.
always wanted a phone number that was the same forwards as backwards.
Ooh, that would have been good.
Not the whole
There's
bit.
a special
but
name for that in numbers, isn't there?
palindrome.
But it's not
words.
a palindrome in numbers, is it?
Oh,
or is
really?
it just a palindromic number? I don't know.
Maybe. I know you can get palindromic words and sentences. Maybe numbers too. Maybe it has its own words.
There's if you add 2 numbers just made up of ones, so if you add like 111 to 111, or if you multiply them, I think it is, the answer is always a palindromic sequence of numbers.
That's
so it goes
cool.
1 2 3 2 1 or 1 2 3 4 3 2 1.
That's cool.
But yeah, I think it's all number ones. If you've got a calculator to hand, check that. It's
And
definitely a sequence of identical numbers.
And write to us at trufaxpodcast@gmail.com to let us know the answers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
rather than us check it for ourselves. Do that for us.
We
Tell
don't,
us if we're wrong.
we don't do research on this show.
And we never will. Not even live research.
What about
that
you?
would be more of an experiment.
Well, what about you, Dan? Do you have a lucky number?
It's probably not going to come as a surprise that I don't really. I don't go in for a lot of that. Like a 28 is a number that I will go to. If you just ask me to pick a number off the top of my head, 28 is probably it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that largely ties into Stuart Lee and Richard Herring. In some of their early comedy routines, 28 was always the number they would go to if they were talking about age. It would be the punchline in a lot of jokes. They would describe something very infantile
Yeah.
and then say, I was 28.
Is that a bit like the 42 being the answer to life, the universe, and
Yeah.
everything? You know, it's just
It's a
go-to.
number picked more or less at random
Mm-hmm.
that's then come into popular culture, that something that's resonated with me and then just stuck.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't really have unlucky numbers. Like numbers. I don't go in for numerology or.
Numerology, is that like a
It's like the before
belief in numbers?
before like science was a real thing. A lot of cultures would put stock in numbers. I think I spoke about it in the dreams episode. Like Italian culture still subscribes to numbers meaning a lot. They'll have dreams that mean specific things.
A lot of people's lucky numbers or unlucky numbers never seem to go past like the hundreds. It seems very much based in like kind of 2 digits rather than anything more than that. No decimals either. Like you don't see anyone saying that, oh yeah, 14.5. It really gets me.
Well, some people, mostly physicists and mathematicians, pi and other numbers are their lucky numbers, their favourite numbers.
Yeah.
If nothing else.
To me, I have to remember so many different numbers that to have lucky ones on top of that would just kind of be too difficult. There's your PIN number, your phone number, your banking security number. There's all sorts of numbers you got to remember, right?
Yeah.
And I think some numbers are lucky for people because of their culture. So in Christianity, 3 and 7 are recurring motifs within the Bible.
Are they? 37.
If you there you go, ooh, spooky.
That's in Harry Potter as well. 7 is a recurring number in Harry Potter.
It's 3.
There are 3 friends.
And they're in every single book.
Yeah.
And in a lot of Asian cultures, 4 is very unlucky. I know in Japanese specifically, 4 is shi, which also means death.
Death.
Wow.
So like 13 here, you won't find a 4th floor in hospitals more than anything, because that's the death
Well,
floor.
they use 3A.
Do they have...
I think they'll just go to 5.
Oh.
But in
So-
places like Hong Kong, where it's a mishmash of Eastern and Western cultures, there'll be buildings without a 4th or a 13th floor.
Serious? So, do they just not number it? Do they have a 4th floor, not have a thing on there? Like, or do they only go up to 3?
No, it'll go 3, 5.
But it still is technically the 4th floor, is it not? Is it just that it's not the 4th floor if they don't name it the 4th floor?
Yeah, so it's about numbers being fluid again. So
That's weird.
they've decided that the 4th floor is the 5th floor.
Well, that's a bit like the difference between UK floors and US floors. So in US, when you walk in the building, you're on floor 1.
Yeah.
Whereas we're kind of on floor 0 or
Yeah,
floor
ground
G.
floor.
Yeah.
Floor G.
Floor G.
That's letters as
Floor
numbers
G
again.
is like
Let me
a
just-
really, really weird data service.
You just connect to floor G. Okay, question. Is 0 a number?
Yeah.
So this is something I had written down as well. So yes, it is. I think we can say now. But as far back as the Greeks and Romans, I think, didn't accept it as a number.
Yeah.
And the whole philosophy behind it was, how can nothing be something?
Yeah. I think it was only through Indian culture.
Yeah.
The 0 became accepted into mathematics.
Isn't it just that it is a number but it doesn't have a value?
I don't know. It's an
The-
even number. I know that. I found that out.
The
Is
big
it
the big
prime?
question numbers in maths are 0 and 1.
And
Yeah.
-1 increasingly
Minus
now.
1, yeah.
Well, so are 0 and are all other numbers just variations of 0 and 1 going to like binary and stuff like that? Like that's makes up the fabric of everything.
Well, they're not multiples because you... Oh, no, you can have multiples of 1, can't you?
But you have strings in binary that are then what create every other value. So I suppose in a way, yes.
in the same way that like white and black are the same color, just different shades. Is that a thing?
Isn't one the absence of light and one is all of light? So it is 0 and 1.
Yeah.
One's on, one's off.
Yeah.
1 is everything or a representation of everything, whereas 0 is...
Is nothing.
But it...
So can something be nothing? Let's pretend we're Greeks here. Can something be nothing?
Yeah, because something is nothing.
Or can nothing be something even?
Yeah.
Is the correct question.
Something can't be nothing, but therefore nothing.
So if
Nothing as itself is like this own little bubble, but that own little bubble is still a thing. Like nothing is a thing.
I mean...
It's a concept.
So by the lack of things, it can be quantified as a thing.
Like,
Yeah.
Nothing can be there. Like there can be the absence of things, but then when we call it a name, when we give it a name, then it becomes something, or it becomes whatever name we...
So you're stuck in an infinite loop, where if it's nothing and we then label it as something, it's no longer
Nothing.
nothing, which means it's no longer the 0 that
So-
was saying
so
it
you're
couldn't
saying-
be.
You're saying by giving the number 0 a name, it no longer is...
Well, by giving it a value of nothing, it's no longer nothing.
But then also you've got to remember that the digit 0 is used in context of other things, like
Mhm.
1 with 3 zeros afterwards.
Yeah, so that becomes an example of numbers being a label again. It's a name for something rather than
Like a
what the
placeholder.
number actually represents.
There's 1,000, but there are no 1s or no 10s.
Yeah. So that's just part of a different number. It's like a letter being part of a word.
My brain hurts.
Yeah.
Numbers, man.
It's like, yeah, is it like a silent E on the end of a word? What's it there for?
Well, it's there in 1,000 because otherwise it'd just be 1.
If you write all the numbers out, the first time you come to the letter A is when you write 1,000. I think.
Yeah, I'm behind
Yeah.
that. I'm doing some spelling in my head.
Well,
There's
'cause
none
I'm-
between 1 and 10.
After
And then they're all just variants of that, really.
Yeah,
yeah.
And 20, 30, 40, 50.
yeah.
Good fact.
Yeah.
It took us a while to get there, but it's a good fact.
Initially I said E. Ryder pointed out that that's in 1.
And 3.
And 0.
All of the numbers.
Yeah.
So 0 is a number. Lucky numbers are superstition. Nothing more than that. The gamblers with their lucky numbers, that's hazardous. Lucky numbers are bad.
I guess, yeah, it's depending on how they're being used. Like, it could be just that sort of thing where it's like you feel that you see that number around more, or you feel that you've got, like, anytime you've used that number, then it does you kind of, that it's fortuitous. But it depends how far you want to take it personally, I guess.
Too far if you're a gambler and believe lucky numbers will see you through. If you're playing roulette, where it's just random chance, but you think 17 is going to win it for you every time, you're going to need to remortgage your house pretty soon.
Ryder, what was your question?
So I guess it kind of leads on from what we've been talking about. Were numbers in existence before we started using them? In the sense of, like, you know, fire was there before we harnessed it, and like there are people who, like Pythagoras and his guys would be like, well, they wouldn't be like Pythagoras and the people who kind of followed his research or kind of theories believed that maths could answer questions of the universe and that numbers can explain everything. So is it that we have found this interpretation of data and used it for things, or is it just something that we've created that fits everything?
I think it's something we've created that fits everything. There's, do you know, the golden ratio?
Yeah.
The Fibonacci sequence. It's reoccurring in nature. So the Fibonacci sequence is numbers consecutively added up to the previous pair. So it's 1, 1, add those together, you get 2.
Yep.
And then it's 1 plus 2 is 3, and it goes on and builds up with the sums of the previous numbers.
Yeah.
But that appears, well, it doesn't appear everywhere in nature, but if you look hard enough for it, it appears.
You find it in, like, plants and kind of genetic structures and things like
A
that.
snail shell.
Yeah, so you have the golden ratio, which is the ratio of the previous number and the current number.
I'm torn in the answer to this question. I believe on the one hand that, yeah, we did just discover them.
Yeah.
Because when you see pebbles on a beach, there is a discrete number of them. There are 3, 4, or 5. And in giving them names, we have, you know, humanized them. We've used our language to describe them, but there were always that quantity.
Yeah.
And there would always have been that quantity. On the other hand, our idea of numbers goes two ways. It either goes, you move up one at a time, or numbers are a continuous line, which you can divide ever smaller and smaller and smaller, and isn't discrete quantities, but is this continuous thing.
But then a number's not something we've created to explain that. Or, because going back to how I was saying numbers are a label for things, it's a name for something that we didn't have an explanation for before.
So it's like the number, but I guess it's that, like numbers as a name is that, it is a label, but is it labeling something that was or is pre-existent?
So yeah, it's the question of, have we created... I don't think we've created numbers. Quantities of things exist. There's theories behind the amounts of things and why things are the way they are.
Yeah.
But we've created the labels for it. It's like
and a kind
language.
of platform to understand it.
We had ways of communicating before we had words, and things have existed before we've given them names.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it existed.
It's been
before
been a long discovery process.
Yeah. And I mean, I kind of mean this in reference to things like that have changed how humans have evolved. So, like, you know, graphene, that sort of super material that we still don't really understand. From what I loosely understand, like a way to look at how they discovered that is they got the equivalent of kind of like graphite inside a pencil and used a very sticky material and took off layers by layers and layers and layers of this material until they got to a single atom thick. And then found out that this thing, when it's at that scale, is a superconductor that can be used in many different ways. And that's just us discovering something and using it.
So we discovered numbers, and now we're using them.
Yeah, kind of just like a tool, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but then I guess
my
my argument is the flip side of that, in that superconductor already existed, and we then discovered it and harnessed it. But numbers are an abstract thing rather than a physical thing. So it's something we've had to kind of develop and understand ourselves. Someone didn't just find a number one day.
Imagine all of humanity dies out, and then in 1,000 years' time, another species takes place.
In the exact same world that we've been living in.
They find some artifacts from our world. Will they grasp the concept of numbers in the same way that we do, or would they have come up with a completely alternative idea?
So it's numbers comes in the context of this question. It's a series of patterns. Whether or not they then assign the same values to the patterns that we've used to understand them, I don't think they necessarily would. But they would grasp the same meaning from those patterns with whatever they choose to label them as.
I sometimes think we've chosen the wrong numbers to represent different ideas. So, you do look at some numbers like the ones that we give letters to, pi or e, these ones that are recurring. The reason they're given letters is so that they don't recur, so that you can do nice, easy equations with them. What if we should have always given them letters and that would have been the correct numerology, and the other discrete items that we've given like 1, 2, 3 numbers for, they should be the recurring ones.
So as in it shouldn't be, it's like the wrong way round. So
yeah,
would you, in that sort of thing, would you say it goes like 1, 2, E, 4, 5, 6, F?
Yeah, or like our current numbers would all be multiples of E, so they would all therefore be recurring, like E is. And then the other part of the equation, E, would be the discrete part.
Yeah, I guess it's that sort of thing where because it's so ingrained in our education systems on a global scale that it's almost like no one is, I guess, prepared to start looking at it from a different perspective because of how cemented it is. Like, someone could say that, okay, you've got E and you've got another one, let's say A, and within E there's then all these other numbers, and that's the first like number alphabet, and then there's a second number alphabet, and it's like that can lead to a whole different way of looking at theories or creating theories and things.
Right. At that point there would be 2 maths languages instead of just one.
Yeah. Or well, like they could link with each other.
Maybe
we're talking about theoretical maths.
Well, to support some credence to the idea that numbers were something that pre-existed before we knew them as numbers, not something I necessarily agree with myself, but the intelligent design theory that's kind of spun out of creationism lends some weight to the idea that maths exists, the golden ratio, and its reoccurrence in nature. If you look at the human face, the golden ratio appears between your nose and your mouth, size of your eyes, your forearm and your hand, the phalanxes, I should say, in your fingers are all golden ratio if you're well proportioned.
No, I mean, is that also just because like fractals are also kind of something that exists in nature, that sort of infinite recurring thing? Do they exist in nature?
So the idea with intelligent design is that rather than being evolved, we've been designed, and so the recurrence of these numbers and patterns suggests that we were planned.
Do you think we find people more attractive who are who have the golden ratio in their face or in their arms?
That's how the logic goes, and when you actually look at it, I think yes, like people who get plastic surgery proportion themselves to match this golden ratio, which is 1.618, somewhere in that area.
Like going on that, I don't necessarily even think you have to go down the intelligent design route. It's just more that there are in the universe in its kind of
so the universe is actually matched to the golden ratio.
Yeah,
it's
and
the
that's
spirals
kind
in
of
the universe.
What I mean, like it's more that is just something that's kind of been a creation of how the universe works. It's a product of the machine that is the universe, and
so that's what intelligent. So you're using the word creation over and over again, suggesting
I don't necessarily
been created and planned in the biblical sense.
I disagree. I don't mean it like that. I don't mean as in I say created, but not by something. Just more of like you put some like ingredients in a bowl in an oven, and it comes out as a piece of bread. Would you say that the oven has created the bread?
No, the person that put it in.
Yeah,
but the person.
So we're not talking about a god necessarily, but there has been a plan rather than just.
I don't necessarily think a plan. I think more just a thing that has a product or a thing that is created from it. It's just like this big spinning machine that has rules inside it. It's not necessarily that anything created those rules, it's just that they are there and it's not total chaos.
But even those rules, even if they existed before, numbers are used to measure them. I think that's what numbers are, or seem like for me. People love to compete, don't they? And numbers seem like a way of measuring success or failure or worth. And these are all very human constructs. You know, who is taller, who has a bigger family, who earns more money. These are all things that are given numerical figures.
And that, to me, is a very human construct.
Right, it didn't come out of nature, it's just...
Yeah, the trees aren't there going, well, I've got the most leaves, I'm the tallest tree in the forest, I'm the king of this place. It is humans wanting to be better than one another.
With the tree circumstance, the ones that have the most leaves might be the most successful, but they don't necessarily...
They're not bragging about it.
They don't advertise it, do
Yeah.
they? They don't engrave the number 6,000 on their trunks to say this is how many leaves I have.
Trees are full of the golden ratio as well, just to carry on down that.
Alright.
So,
The Fibonacci sequence, as branches split off, it's usually in a Fibonacci sequence.
I heard
Number of petals on plants, number of leaves on every branch, the proportion of leaves as they spin around, kind of the angles that they are in conjunction with one another.
there's,
It's all a golden angle.
I know, okay, but I've
It's
heard,
everywhere, man.
I've heard, yeah,
And
this
that-
is
but if you're looking for it,
But
again,
this is
it's-
conspiracy theory territory. You know, I've heard that the reason this is everywhere in nature is because it's the simplest way to increase.
Yep.
Is because like if you build one and it doubles, you get two, and if it doubles, you get four, and that's the Fibonacci sequence. Is just natural.
Yeah, but it looks
Doubling.
really good.
I'm very skeptical about it myself. I'm just using it as a counterpoint because it is used by a lot of creationist. It's
Yeah, you're
wackos.
starting.
I don't want to sound like that myself, but it's there if you look for it. Same with any pattern, and it just so
Yeah.
happens to be a pattern that is very easy to find. Like
So-
sunflowers, pineapples, they're all golden ratios.
And do you think it's just a...
I think it's a coincidence.
Yeah.
But it is easy to use that as the argument for numbers existing before
Yeah.
numbers were numbers as
I
we
think
know them.
it's
those
just
pi-
only its
those-
quantity.
And
It's
those
like-
pineapples didn't think how many spines should I put on myself?
don't
I
know
know.
that.
I'll add up the last two and put 3 and 4. They didn't. They
You a
didn't think
pineapple? Have you ever
It
been
just
a pineapple?
happens to be a convenient number, and if you're looking at the golden angle,
that. Maybe I am a pineapple.
Oh.
I honestly don't believe pineapples have the conscious thought to decide how many spikes to put on them, how many pines.
and that's not what we're saying. This is the intelligent designers saying that someone planned that for the pineapples. They've not decided it themselves. The pineapple man up in the sky, he's gone, pineapple's going to look like this, and they're going to match the waves, and they're going to match the galaxy, they're going to match how hurricanes spin.
Coincidence.
That's
And it's- and I
that's
think-
what
or
I
it's
think.
just
all
like
of
the
it.
machine of the universe, and it's got the. I don't know. I like that idea. I think it's that it's just like it's an equation.
It's
that
just a
fits
happy
everything.
accident.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. It's an
Yeah.
equation that conveniently fits all these things.
Yeah.
If you start to measure things accurately, it completely throws everything off.
There was
But
a.
it's something that predates maths, and we've then, as we've created numbers and maths, we've found that this suddenly fits.
There was a thing that Brian Cox was saying on a interview or a podcast that he was on, talking about how the way that our universe looks and is kind of built up is how a universe would look if you were to try and kind of create a universe as a science project. Like, as in it fits everything very nicely, and it all kind of it fits into that sort of idea of it being like a like I want to kind of avoid that sort of creationists argument, but if
You love
I don't like.
You're going right down that path.
I wasn't. Brian Cox was.
Yeah, but I mean, again, is that cause or effect?
Is it that we're looking to say it fits into this thing?
Are we looking
Yeah.
for all of
It's
those,
because we're afraid of the chaos and the randomness.
or are we an effect of all the right conditions? And that there are thousands of other universes that didn't work out, but because they didn't, there were no humans.
But they'll have their own golden ratios as well from their own creators.
You see other things recurring in nature as well, other patterns like the sine wave. You know, that's something you see
What's
all
the
the time.
sine wave?
Sine as in SINE. You know, this up down curve. Like if you
Oh yeah,
yeah, you learn about this in maths.
I forgot it.
No.
I did,
Yeah.
but I
We probably
forgot.
should have learned about it in maths. I did A-level maths because I was quite into maths
Yeah.
and stopped going. I fell out with school at a certain point and stopped going, and probably should have carried on going. There's a couple of my other friends who are in a similar boat, and I think between the three of us across 9 exams in maths, we failed to score enough cumulatively to even get a passing grade on a single paper. This is why I like it when things are convenient and just fit. I like whole numbers, even numbers.
I think your worldview is starting to make more and more sense by the minute.
Just don't understand. Letters as numbers, why? Just why?
It does go further than just counting on your fingers, you know that?
I know about counting up my arm and around the rest of my body now. I can get to 50.
Remembering that you've already counted 5 on one finger.
Okay, well, let's go to the ultimate armchair scientist and ask my question to the group. There are numbers that don't have names, like I've already mentioned, E or I. If you would...
Are they not called E or I?
Well, they are, but they are already... They are called those.
That's radius.
Ah.
I remember that.
Yeah, thank you.
If you discovered a new number and you decided you weren't going to call it something that was already a thing, such as R, E, or I, what would you call it?
First of all, how would we know it was a new number? I know imaginary numbers are a thing, but because they've already got a label, surely that means they already exist. So are we inventing
Let's go back
or
to
discovering something completely new?
Let's go back to your favourite thing, the golden ratio.
Yeah.
And let's say you found the exact, you were able to calculate the exact number of the golden ratio. What would you call it?
Okay, so it's not necessarily a brand new number. It's not like that whole new colour thing or a new smell. And how would you describe it to someone else? It's we've come up with a new thing, a new key, a new integer that's going to explain everything.
So I read that the way numbers were originally written, you know, like 1, 2, 3, as you write them on a page.
4.
Is that next? Is that what comes next? Oh, right.
I remember that much.
Fantastic. I read that they were originally designed to have the same number of angles within the written numeral as the number they represent.
Oh, that's cool.
So you think about the number 3, if it was drawn with straight lines, has 3 angles in it. Yeah?
I'm following.
Sorry, I'm mapping it out.
2 as a Z has 2 angles. 1 as not just a line, but one with a little tail at the top, as it were, has 1 internal angle.
What about 5?
Yeah, so they've obviously come a long way since they were originally invented. I think they're Arabic originally or something, aren't they, numbers? Or Greek. The Greek?
Everyone had their own different symbols and kind of runes and ways of writing numbers. They all meant different things until... You
are now the creator. You're inventing a new number.
I want to know what my number's for first, so I can give it a name. I think a lot of these other numbers that have... Like, where did pi come from?
Circles?
Do we know?
It was always there, Dan.
Yeah. That's what I'm starting to believe now. I think I've believed my own hype.
It's the relationship
I came in as a skeptic for the first time ever. I've been won over by an argument.
R.I.P.D.
I'm gonna go and watch that straight after this. I'm gonna find a new number within R.I.P.D. The R.I.P.D. number.
The ghost number.
It's the number 1. It's the best there is. It's the new meaning for number 1.
Let's say the number you're coming up with is the phone number to call the R.I.P.D.
Don't even need to call. They just know they're there. This is 0. Just happens. Do you have an answer for this, Ed?
No.
Okay.
I don't really, I guess, get the question. Like, as in, so we so like the nth term or nth number, is that sort of thing? Like, it's a concept number. Like, this number answers some of the questions.
Sure. You discover a new number.
Like it's like the octopus number because it has 8 different uses. What
uses would those be? What number are you? Are you just thinking of the number 8?
No. This is like, as in, it's got spindly bits. It's got 8 different characters. But the decimal point can move wherever you want. But it can only ever be 8, and it helps answer depth-related questions.
Is that something you've been looking for in your life? Is that a hole that you needed filled?
I just need to know how deep that hole was.
And you use the octopus number to find out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I I still don't know. This is too. This is too much for me, Ed.
It can.
You're exploding my brain.
What about the perfect calculation of the amount of cheese you put in a toasty to how long you have to keep it in the toasty maker?
It's the golden ratio. You want the cheese to go golden. It's already there.
And what would you call? You're just going to call it the golden ratio? Or are you
Well, no, it is. It is already the golden ratio. It's well known.
Sure.
I didn't mention that before when I was talking about
Call
it.
it the cheese number.
The cheese number is
It's quite
1.618.
self-descriptive.
The golden ratio. It's there.
Okay, what symbol?
The perfect browning, and it's the perfect temperature as well.
Like if you had to write the golden
1618.
ratio and in an equation, you obviously can't write it out in full. It's three
It's
words.
a vertical line with a circle in the middle. It's called phi.
Oh right, so it's
It does have a
already a
name.
thing.
Yeah.
that's just you can't like
It's
a Greek.
everything.
That's like a Greek letter, yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's the symbol and the name that they use for it. You
let's
could just call it for the cheese one. You can call it the gratio, from the word grater, like a cheese grater.
That'd be good. Yeah.
Okay, we're getting somewhere with this.
We're getting nowhere fast.
We're using the left side of our brain right now.
I think mine's not firing on any synapses.
I like the ratio. That's good. It's like the amount that you need to grate something before it gets too close to your fingers.
Nice. Also sounds like the great ratio as well.
Yeah.
Like when you grate something, you get more surface area. So maybe you're optimizing surface area to taste at that point.
And then that same number would somehow tie into the optimum temperature that you use to melt the cheese as well.
And the number of drips of Worcester sauce.
And then the octopus
Worcestershire sauce.
number can help you tell you how far it needs to go into the oven in relation to the grill.
Depth related number.
Yeah. I thought of another use. Like if you make a mistake with the equation, you get the opportunity to just spray ink everywhere and then start again.
It's like a self-destruct feature of the number.
Yeah. What about yourself, Ed?
I'm actually trying to think of one too.
It's quite a difficult question.
Yeah, I think I'd like the sleep constant.
Ooh.
So the amount of activity you do during the day, and in relation to how much sleep you need to recover from it to feel optimal.
Mm-hmm.
And the symbol for it would be a little bed, or maybe even a pillow. No.
We're just going to start assigning values to emojis now. Every single emoji is a number that we can add.
The fuck constant, the amount of people that are having sex around the world
At any one time.
at any one time, it is actually always the same number. It's kind of like the golden ratio, like it is always there, just made up accidentally by the collective human consciousness. There is always the same amount of people having sex at the same time.
Or it just means 0. It's the amount of fucks you give about any given thing.
The fuck constant.
Yeah,
Nice.
that came from Ed calling me Mr. Fuck Constant.
Because
Not
you
for,
kept saying the word fuck.
Yeah, not for like because I won't go down that.
You're constantly fucking.
It's constantly.
Right. Slightly unsatisfactory answer, but I won't hold it against you. It's a tough question.
You didn't even have an answer.
I did. I came up with the sleep constant.
Sleep constant. I didn't have an answer. Is there a number I can apply to that? What's the perfect answer to this question? That
42.
is the number I need to give.
42. I don't know.
That's the number that's already been. It was a
Discovered.
I know it's the number that you use for the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. Did it have a name, or is it just 42?
I think it was meant to be a joke on the part of Douglas Adams. Is that the guy who wrote it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why 42? Is there a backstory behind
No.
that?
No, there really wasn't.
No, it's just a number.
Yeah. He just
There
liked
probably
it.
is some sort of trivia that we could not research, and hopefully someone could email us at trufaxpodcast@gmail.com or on Twitter at trufaxpodcast.
It's the plug ratio, the amount of times one can plug themselves within a given
The Trufax
podcast.
constant.
Yeah. The answer is about a half, I think, usually.
So what? For every hour of podcast, 30 minutes is devoted to plugging.
No.
this.
For every podcast, we'll do half a successful plug. Try and get people to get in touch with us.
Cool. So in summary, numbers. What are they? We don't
Still don't know. What is numbers? We'll end as we started.
Numbers is sounds that we make about things.
It's a name for something else, is what numbers is.
Yeah.
that helps explain things to us.
Yeah.
It's
Helps
the
us assign value and meaning to things that are otherwise.
quite
Confusing.
complicated.
I mean, numbers
Yeah.
are still confusing though.
Mm-hmm.
I am definitely more confused now in my world outlook.
That whole debate about discovery versus already there, I couldn't decide what the difference between the two sides of the argument even was.
And now I think
yeah.
I believe in God. Let's go and get some maths degrees,
Yeah.
and we'll come back in a few years' time and revisit this with some more satisfactory facts.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.